We are Social Blade.
Digg has let go of a lot of people. They brought in a new CEO 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, however long ago, and one of the very first moves was a move that, unfortunately, I have to agree with, should have been done a long time ago, and that is to release quite a few people. It's not that they're bad people, but Digg has always been, for the last 3 or 4 years, been a bloated company. For a tech company to have that many people is just outrageous. You know, you look at a site like Twitter that has 300 employees. At one point, Digg had over half that, with about 1/10 of the audience. So that's not a good thing. I think that Digg is right sizing, and so they've cut 37% of their staff, over 1/3 of their staff. Just 2 months ago, they cut 10% of their staff. So these are changes that happened. They're there. It's done. Now, hopefully, Digg will be able to come back. And as you can see on the screen, here's a list of some of the names. Let's have a moment of silence and a tip of 40 for those who have met their social media demise. In reality, we should not even feel bad for them, because a lot of these people are getting picked up left and right by tech companies across the country. They realize that, hey, if you can make it on Digg, you can make it anywhere, kid. Is that my closet door open? What in the world happened there? I think there's a ghost on this All Hallows Eve. Ooh, did you see that? Did you see the shadow in the background? I saw it. Anyway, there's a ghost behind me. So that's one of the major changes. Another major change, or at least big news for Digg, is that Matt Williams, CEO, made an announcement, a couple of announcements, one of them being that everybody's fired. But then the next one being that we are going into startup mode. And this is something that I think is, both from a PR perspective as well as from a philosophy perspective, is probably the best thing they could do. By going into startup mode, basically what they're saying is, look, we are opening up to reinvent ourselves, to become whatever it takes to take what we have, which is still a significant amount of people visiting the site on a daily basis. Not compared to last year, but compared to other sites, they would be greatly envied. So to reinvent themselves, so to speak, and to evolve is probably the best thing that they could possibly imagine doing, and it really is. They've got to do something. They are hurting. You know, the credibility is diminishing. The trust factor, both between websites as well as users, is diminishing, and so at this point, it's time to say, whoa. Let's do something, and let's do something different, and let's do something drastic, dramatic, and positive, because some of the changes that have been going on lately have been negative in a way. And I'm going to be fair with this last portion of the story and state, I'm going to first state what the accusation was, and then I will state what else happened, or what Digg's response was. So the accusation was this: Lieutenant General Panda, known as Mohan, he was a former Digg Power user until the new version of Digg, had uncovered some suspicious activity that was occurring by Digg on behalf of mainstream websites. So he found 159 profiles. That these profiles, you couldn't see them visibly on the website, but you could see, or at least you couldn't see what they were voting for on the website, but you could see them through the API. He discovered these 159 profiles with names that were patterned names, such as DD34, DD35, DD36, DD37. Then they would have Diggers with a Z, Diggers 10, Diggers 11, Diggers 12, Diggers 13. These are the names of the profiles, and these profiles are voting for a series of stories that seem to be able to hit the front page. Stories from whitelisted sites, from mainstream sites such as Telegraph, such as Huffington Post, BBC, these various sites. So Mohan discovered it. He exposed it. First, he gave Digg a chance. He said, my story is long. It should take you 20 minutes to read it, so I'll give you 30 minutes before I publish it, and give you time to respond. They did not respond in those 30 minutes time, so he posted it. The activity itself stopped, and then they came out with a blog post the next day. You can see on the screen right now, those are those names. Those are the number of stories they dug that had hit the front page, as well as their actual names, the ones on the right highlighted in yellow. Very clearly a pattern, and Digg did not deny it. Digg came out and said, yeah, those are our accounts. We're testing to improve the algorithm that is able to detect spam. We noticed loopholes and entry points that certain terrible, horrid social media promotional firms were utilizing to dominate the front page of Digg, and as a result, they wanted to compete against those firms by figuring out how to use Digg, and they figured basically if we're going to be testing, let's go ahead and make sure we test with high quality sites such as Telegraph, such as Wired, Huffington Post, stuff like that, so that we know that if we do happen to get stories on the front page, that at least they're higher quality. That's their story, and I'm going to support that story, even though there's a lot of question as to whether or not that really is the case. The reason there's a question is because one of the big criticisms of Digg since version 4 was released is that high-quality sites without an agenda behind them, basically, were not hitting the front page. And so the accusation and the supposition has been that they were inflating these numbers so that they could basically win back the favor of sites like Wired, who posted an article last month saying, hey, our Digg traffic's gone, or New York Times or Telegraph, or any of these sites that they think should, quote-unquote, be on the front page. Anyway, that's some of the big news. It is what it is.
Hold on, I want to comment.
Digg.
I want to comment though on their response there, that they were testing the
You
algorithm
may.
and whatnot. There's one reason that doesn't make sense to me here. First, JD, correct me if I'm wrong, and you were using the beta version of Digg quite a lot before it went public.
Yes.
Was it or was it not reading the same data as the old live version of Digg?
Yes.
So my question is, if they were doing some testing, how come they didn't just set up a test environment that also mirrored the live version of Digg, and then they would do their testing in that other environment there, and you'd have the data from live and their test in there. They could have.
Theoretically, they did. In theory, and this was not stated in the blog post, but this is something that probably should have been, and Kevin Rose was very clear about saying they've been testing since the beginning. In theory, what could have happened, let's look at the timeline here. If they detect a problem, they start this testing on the non-live environment in, say October 1st. And by October 14th, they decide, okay, so it seems to be working. There are loopholes. Let's test it on the live environment and for a short period of time. On the 15th, they put out a blog post that says we will be testing 2 variations of the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
At least 2 variations, they said. There was going to be multiple variations, and that sometimes the front page that you were served was going to be different from what other people were served. I happen to have experienced this many times myself, where the front page would literally change on me, and then a story that was there that had hit the front page 2 hours ago was gone, but then it would hit again 4 hours later. So I know that was the case. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's possible, and again I'm being a Digg defender here when I say this, but it's possible that yes, they were testing it in the unlived environment, and then they needed to take it live just to see, because the one aspect that you cannot do in a
test environment
is gauge and view responses. In other words, what if if a story, because they were looking for ways to take stories off the front page, if a story only hits the front page in the test environment, you won't be able to duplicate comments. And that's the big, or digs after the fact, because they did say that one of the things they were pulling off was to remove stories from Digg, from the Digg front page if they did not perform well. And you could only test performance of a front page story if it was actually on the front page itself. And see, that was a matter, back to what Jeff had talked about earlier. That was a matter of me unlocking creativity and my accidental genius, because I had no idea you were going to bring up that question, but by golly, I just convinced myself that's probably the case. Next.
So we're just doing an instant poll here also, just to poll the audience to see what everyone thinks. Is Digg lying in this sense? We've asked the audience, and the answers are either yes, no, or unknown. And at the moment, it looks like the overwhelming feeling from our audience, with 85% or more than 85% of people are saying yes, they're lying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you this much. First off, I voted no, and I'll be the only one that votes no. But second off, this is a sad testament, because had the same thing happened a year and a half, 2 years ago, and Digg came out with the exact same response, it would be different. People would have believed Digg. The fact that they have lost so much credibility lends to the idea that they really, truly must they must reinvent themselves again. And that's sad considering that a year and a half ago they were on top of the world. 2 years ago they were, or 2.5 years ago they were dubbed by Newsweek, I believe it was.
Well, it was like, well, it's almost like how the United States government was viewed before Nixon, Watergate. No one questioned, and then after it happened, everyone's cynical, everyone criticizes, and the government doesn't do anything right. So I mean, Digg has fallen into that same thing.
So just to be clear, we are comparing Kevin Rose to Richard Nixon live on the Social Blade Show. That should be our next question. Who do you like better, Kevin Rose or Richard Nixon?
Invading the internet, covering Web 2.0, coast to coast, worldwide, and everywhere in between. This is where you put the social in social media. We are Social Blade.